It's 3 years since the devastating earthquake in Petrinja, and here we are today just to see how things are going. We're in the central square. Behind us, some of the iconic buildings that were all shown all over the world with the destruction, and let's have a look and see how things are going. I first visited the day after the earthquake on December the 30th, 2020. It was during lockdown, and I can honestly say I've never been more proud of the people of my adopted homeland here in Croatia. Despite not being allowed to cross boundaries, everybody came from all over Croatia, from Varaždin, from Dubrovnik, from Istria, from Slavonia. Their cars packed full of food and blankets, and also tools to help with the immediate assistance in terms of making buildings safe. And wherever you went, there were just people all over doing what they could, and that emergency response from the people was incredible, as also from the army and so on. So that was it, and I went around, and really three places that I really concentrated on, and I've been back. I went back a year later, and I went back again yesterday. The epicentre of the earthquake in Majske Poljane, a small village, and then also there's a village called Zazina, where the church sort of collapsed, and it's one of the iconic sort of photographs of the earthquake. And then, of course, Petrinja itself. The first place we're stopping here is in the small village of Zazina, which had one of the most iconic images of destruction, the church. And I'm happy to say that things are on the mend. This is how Zazina looked when we went the first year. The only difference in the second year was that there was a small little church which is still functioning today, and outside was quite bizarrely, I thought, was a collection box saying please donate for the reconstruction of the church, as though it was the job of the congregation. But great to see things are moving forward. Their work started in January this year, I understand. We then drove and all the way down into Majske Poljane on the main Petrinja Glina road. And what was interesting to me actually was that I didn't see a single house without a roof. So it seems as though, although the houses weren't in great condition, on the main street, this kind of show road, everything was at least improving slightly. One of the places I stopped was a church in Gora. This was a little bit scandalous at the time because it's a beautiful stone church, had just been opened like 3 or 4 years before the earthquake, and was one of the buildings that sort of came down. And again, a bit more work on churches. It seems that churches are quite a priority to fix. And then we went down, and the only billboards we saw were for insurance. Obviously, it must be an interesting time to be in the insurance business. And then we went to Majske Poljane, and it was a really depressing place. I feel so sorry for the people there. It seems as though it's been pretty much abandoned even before the earthquake. Some people are trying to make do and get their houses up, as you can see, and others, they're still ruins and so on. But it's a very, very sort of lost and abandoned place, in my opinion. One change was just as you come out of Majske Poljane. A couple of years ago, there was a container village with people in temporary accommodation, and they basically provided these temporary containers with beds, TV, and then there was a cooking little stove, and it was functional, and it kept people warm. And I went inside, and we met these two brothers who were just living in this thing, and I wondered, would they be there forever? And at least now that's changed a little bit. The village is no longer there, and people now are in temporary accommodation or in some spa down close by, according to the information I got. And so to Petrinja itself, I was expecting 3 years on, especially with symbolism and politics and so on, that there would be a major reconstruction having taken place in the main square, at least something to show in terms of PR. And there were 1 or 2 buildings done, but basically, as you can see, this is how Petrinja Central Square looks today. And if you look from behind the facades, this is how it looks too. So not a lot to show after 3 years, and I can only imagine what it must be like living in this town 3 years later and wondering when are they ever going to be properly sorted. There are lots of visions, of course, but 3 years on, this is the story. This is not to say that politics is not playing a huge role here. The anniversary is obviously very symbolic, and next year is a huge election year in Croatia. We have presidential, national, and parliamentary elections, and so the politicians were out and about. Of course, Prime Minister Andrej Plenković was around giving out keys to new apartments to people who'd lost their homes, and this was a nicely spun story. But talking to local people, very soon after they were given the keys and the cameras went away, they were asked to return the keys because the apartments weren't quite ready, but they had to be ready for the TV spin. And there was one case of one lady who was so delighted at getting a new apartment that she actually gave away her fridge and her washing machine to a friend who didn't have those things, because she had everything waiting for her in her apartment, only to find, having given them away, that she then had to go without for another few weeks until she could move in because the apartment wasn't ready. There's a lot of discontent, I can understand that. There's also a few things which, with a little bit of intelligence, could be fixed. So apparently these new apartments are, very state-of-the-art. They have underfloor heating. They have digital locks to get in and out. They have inductor cookers and so on. And, this is all great, except a lot of the people moving in are elderly and have absolutely no understanding of how to use these things. So without some basic education, things are going a little bit wrong. And this is fixable. But I heard of a case of one lady who doesn't have the pots to use the inductor stove, and she's actually cooking on a stove outside on the terrace. Another guy an old guy who couldn't figure out how to work the digital lock, and so he spent two days sleeping outside because he couldn't get into his apartment and his phone and everything. So 3 years on, some progress, I guess, but really fairly minimal to report. And I always get in trouble when I mention this guy's name, but it's quite interesting. If you look at what happened in Croatia in 2020, we had the devastating earthquake in Zagreb on March 22nd, and then we had the one in Petrinja on December the 29th. And 3 years later, the amount of reconstruction that's been done in both is really quite pitiful. And then if I go back 60 years to 1962 and 1963, there were two devastating earthquakes. One was in Makarska, where 14,000 buildings were destroyed or partially destroyed. And that was followed by a massive earthquake in Skopje, in Macedonia, the capital, in 1963. And in both cases, Tito, the man we're not allowed to mention, mobilized all resources, and within 17 months, I interviewed somebody who was a child during the 1962 Makarska earthquake. Within 17 months, all 14,000 buildings had been rebuilt. And in Skopje, within 17 months, basically a new city had been constructed. Now, I know there are things you can't compare between 1960s, where there was little infrastructure, and what's happening today. But surely the people of Zagreb and the people particularly of Petrinja, of Glina and of Majske Poljane, surely they deserve better.